There's a few Republicans in the Senate. All you need is 51 to get it out of the Senate. So to pass the House with a handful of Republican votes, it'll come to the Senate. It might get 51. It'll get vetoed by the president, and Republicans will stand with the president to sustain his veto, and it will be deader than dead.
All right, that was South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham last week with me right here on Sunday Morning Future, sharing his prediction on the fate of a Democratic House resolution intended to block President Trump's national emergency declaration to build a border wall. The Senate will soon consider the measure after it passed the House last week. Some Republicans are signaling their support over concerns a future Democratic president could also choose to go the national emergency route to bypass Congress. That's why they're pushing back on this. Joining me right now in an exclusive interview is Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott. He sits on the Senate Homeland and Governmental Affairs and Armed Services Committees. And Senator, it's good to have you this morning. How are you going to vote in that measure?
Well, I'm going to vote for border security. I'm going to vote with the president. Everybody that's going to vote on this ought to go down to the border like I did. Talk to Border Patrol, and here's what they're going to tell you. One, they need more people. Two, they need new technology. The technology they've got is decades old. And three, they've got to have barriers so they have operational control. So if you go talk to them, there is no way you could then say, oh, I'm going to vote against border security. The Democrats don't want border security. The American public wants border security. They want results. I know a lot of people don't like the process. None of us like this process. It's all caused because the Democrats don't believe in border security. I want results. I know the president wants results.
All right. So what about your colleagues who say the reason that I have to push back and not vote with the president is because a Democratic president in the future might take advantage of the same thing? I mean, this has been used, what, 60 times, calling a national emergency.
Right. Well, look, a lot people can come up with a rationale for voting against things. I think the American public, they want results. The president tried. Look, he's tried to get the Democrats to fund the border. He offered things. He said, let's talk about DACA. Let's talk about fixing the TPS program. And they said, no way. They did everything they could to make sure there was no border security. So the president's doing what he has to do to take care of the American public, which believes in having a secure border. And I'm going to vote with the president. And I hope every Republican, and I hope the Democrats will take the time, go to the border, and once they do, they have one choice. Either vote for border security or go tell border security that you don't care about their safety, and you're telling Americans you don't care about their safety. It's a simple choice, in my opinion.
Well, what about your colleagues on the Republican side that are going against the president? Why aren't your colleagues firmly behind this president then?
I think people are, they want to say that, oh, this is not the right process, and I agree. It's not the right process. I mean, nobody wants this to be the process we go through. Why are we here? Because Washington is completely dysfunctional. That's what Washington doesn't work. I've been there about 2 months. It doesn't work. But the Democrats will not fund what Americans want. Americans want border security. The president's doing his job, secure the border.
When you say Washington doesn't work, is that because that too many people in the Congress have their own ideologies and they're not doing what their constituents really want them to do?
I think there's a bunch of actors. I mean, look at the Democrats. They'll go give a talk about border security, and they'll vote against it. I mean, there's just a lot of actors up there. We've got to get people that, one, I believe in term limits as an example. We've got to get new people up there that are just absolutely committed to getting something done. We shouldn't pay people if you shut down government, if you don't pass a budget. That's your job. I mean, there's some basic things that I'm a business guy.
Right.
And so in business, you try to get things accomplished.
Let me ask you this. The bill is going to come to the Senate floor when? What's the timing on this? When do you expect to vote?
We're not sure exactly when we're going to vote on it. I think it's still another couple weeks at least. It's going to come. It's got to come. I think it's got to come to Armed Services first.
Yeah.
And then we have 15 days. So I think it's at least 2 more weeks.
Meanwhile, the president just back from Hanoi with his meeting with Kim Jong-un. Your reaction to that? The president talks a lot about his relationship with Kim Jong-un, but we are yet to see any real movement in terms of denuclearization.
Well, first off, let's remember, he's a dictator. Kim Jong-un's a dictator. He's a thug. He's a murderer. That's what he is. Now, I think the president's doing the right thing by trying to figure out how we make our country safer, by sitting down with him and saying, you need to denuclearize, and this is why your country, you and your citizens will be in a better position. Now, in business, you know that you have to walk away from deals a lot. That's the way what happens. Often before you get a deal, you have to walk away from it. I think the president did the right thing. He walked away because he is not getting what he wanted out of the deal. And I'm proud of him for doing that.
Yeah, but what can we expect on this issue?
Well, you know, what you hope for is that North Korea comes to their senses and says, look, I want to have freedom and democracy. I want to have our citizens with plenty of food. I want to have them great jobs. That's what you'd hope.
Yeah.
But we have to remember this guy's a tyrant. He's a thug. He murders his own citizens, his own family. So you have to have low expectations.
All right, we will leave it there. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
Nice seeing you.
Senator Rick Scott joining us there.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, we've seen an awful lot of change during the 2 years Trump has been president. American politics has been completely reordered, but also the American media has changed forever. News organizations that seemed like a big deal just 5 years ago are now extinct. Some of them are totally forgotten. Those that remain have either degraded themselves beyond recognition, like The New Yorker, or they've been purchased by Jeff Bezos to conduct unregistered lobbying for Amazon.com, like The Washington Post. It's hard to remember that not so long ago, America had prestige media outlets. Harvard graduates literally went to work for Newsweek rather than private equity. Not anymore. Teen Vogue now has a news division. And so does a New York-based cat blog called BuzzFeed. If you're an affluent single person in a gentrifying part of Brooklyn who likes cats, and of course that's redundant because they all like cats, then you know and you love BuzzFeed. When a BuzzFeed headline commands you to, quote, stop everything and watch this cat who loves the ocean, you do. You stop everything. You watch that cat. When BuzzFeed offers one of its trademark cat quizzes, you dutifully take the quiz. What kind of personality does your cat actually have? Or, how cat are you? Take this quiz. Meow. You think you know a lot about cats. BuzzFeed knows more. On all questions feline, BuzzFeed is the final authority. But what happens when BuzzFeed tries to do real news? Well, in early 2017, we found out. The site released the now famous Trump dossier. It was a catalog of salacious and unverified gossip, financed by the DNC originally, about President-elect Trump. Many other news outlets, nearly all of them anti-Trump, had seen the dossier, but they passed on it. It was just too irresponsible to run. But not BuzzFeed. They thought it was perfect. Meow! So they ran it. 2 years later, the BuzzFeed dossier has come to define the entire Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy tale. The problem is, a lot of the dossier is pretty clearly untrue. For example, one of the key claims in the dossier that BuzzFeed ran is that Trump attorney Michael Cohen held secret meetings with Russian agents in Prague. They never offered any evidence that that happened. There never was any evidence. And then finally, last week, Michael Cohen himself confirmed it never happened.
You ever been to Prague?
I've never been to Prague.
Never have.
I've never been to the Czech Republic.
You might balance my time.
Well, so that seems like a pretty big development. 2 years ago, BuzzFeed told us, you remember it, we did a show on it, that Michael Cohen held a secret meeting with Russian spies in Prague. We've been hearing about that ever since in Congress and on cable news. We have, in fact, halted the normal workings of government, in part because of that meeting. Now it turns out it never took place. So it's not a small thing to learn from Michael Cohen. How did BuzzFeed cover this latest stunning development? Well, they didn't cover it. They ignored it completely. As of tonight, BuzzFeed was promoting instead a story entitled 21 Completely Life-Changing Things You Can Make in a Waffle Maker. There was nothing about the non-existent Michael Cohen Russian spy meeting in Prague. If you only read BuzzFeed, you would never know that that story was false. Well, apparently a lot of people in media only read BuzzFeed and not simply for its lavish cat coverage. This January, BuzzFeed published a story with this sentence, quote, President Donald Trump directed his longtime attorney Michael Cohen to lie to Congress about negotiations to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, end quote. BuzzFeed presented no evidence to show that that was actually true, just unnamed sources. But it didn't matter. The cat lovers on cable news went crazy.
This would be certainly a bombshell information.
BuzzFeed's latest bombshell report.
The White House is slamming a bombshell report by BuzzFeed.
With a bombshell report from BuzzFeed.
If the BuzzFeed bombshell is true.
The bombshell report.
It was really a bombshell. And actually, in some sense, it was. The claim was, anyway, directing someone to lie under oath is a felony, and it ought to be. Had this been true, the Trump presidency likely would have ended, and for good reason, legitimate reason. But it wasn't true. Instead, it was a lot like the claim that, I don't know, cats suck the breath from babies, or that a black cat brings bad luck. It was a wives' tale posing as fact. The Mueller investigation itself batted down BuzzFeed's story almost immediately after it came out. And yet, BuzzFeed never retracted the piece. Once again, in its feline way, the site pretended that nothing had happened. You can yell at a cat, but you can't make a cat pay attention, it turns out. To be clear, here are the key quotes from the January BuzzFeed story. Quote, Trump directed his longtime attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress, end quote. And again, quote, the president personally instructed him to lie, end quote. And once again, quote, it is the first known example of Trump explicitly telling a subordinate to lie directly about his own dealings with Russia. Explicitly telling a subordinate to lie. That's the claim. Okay. Democratic members of Congress asked Michael Cohen last week about that specific claim. Cohen was under oath at the time, a declared enemy of Donald Trump, not someone who had any reason to lie about this. Here's how he responded.
Mr. Trump did not directly tell me to lie to Congress. That's not how he operates.
Okay, let's try to just make sure we've got this totally clear. Trump directed Michael Cohen to lie. He personally instructed him to lie. He, quote, explicitly told him to lie. Those are the claims from BuzzFeed. Did Michael Cohen really do that? Here's his account again.
Did the president in any way, from your point of view, coach you in terms of how to respond to questions or the content of your testimony before a House committee?
Again, it's a difficult answer because he doesn't tell you what he wants. What he does is, again, Michael, there's no Russia, there's no collusion, there's no involvement, there's no interference. I know what he means because I've been around him for so long. So if you're asking me whether or not that's the message, that's staying on point, that's the party line that he created, that so many others are now touting, yes, that's the message that he wanted to reinforce.
That's the message. So Michael Cohen says, you just heard him say, that Trump claimed there was no Russian collusion and no interference in the 2016 presidential election. If that sounds familiar, it's because that's exactly what Trump has been telling the world for 2 years, every day in a loud voice to anyone who will listen. BuzzFeed claims that this is somehow proof that its original story was entirely accurate. 19 adorable Siamese kittens that are actually talented investigative reporters. We're waiting for that story next.